Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. All right, major sports are over now, so that means that you can bet on UFC 276. And it doesn't matter who wins, as long as you're a new customer, you get that $100 right there. Now, joined by a man that you would not want to see against you in UFC 276, Mr.
I don't know about that.
William Brad Allis. Brad, how you doing, buddy?
I'm guessing 95% of your listeners would just gas me out by running around for like.
No. Brad, you got very broad. You got broader shoulders than I do right there.
Yes, but I do not have the cardio you do right now, probably.
Well, you know what? It would have to be a quick fight, but
yeah.
Who knows? It'd be a Tyson type, get that first round out of the way.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk a ton of U of A basketball. Going to talk some recruiting. But first, we haven't talked since the NBA draft. And I was a little taken aback, to be honest with you, because I was thinking about it off the top of my head about a week ago. And I'm like, when was the last time Arizona had 3 first-round picks? And immediately I'm like, all right, 98, you had Mike and Mike D, but then you didn't have Miles until the second round. 01, obviously Gilbert was an early second round pick. RJ was the 13th pick. And then come to find out, Arizona has never done that before. Elliott and AC were in the same class. But were you a little surprised by that? Did you know that?
I would have guessed that. I didn't know that, but I would have guessed, and only because that's what Luke did. He spread those recruiting classes. And when they did have sometimes multiple draft picks in one class, something would kind of mess it up, whether it was Walton redshirting and coming out 2 years later than RJ, or the fact that the NBA abandoned 5'10" point guards, so Gardner never even got drafted, or a guy falls you don't expect to fall. Because frankly, I thought Lauren Woods would be a first rounder, and Gilbert.
I did too.
In fact, I think Michael Wright went higher than at least one of them, if not both.
Michael Wright went higher than Lauren, yeah.
Yeah, so, and Wright was the guy you thought would slip because of his height. So it doesn't really surprise me. I think maybe the one that surprised you the most, that maybe Miller didn't have one.
Yeah, for sure.
If you think about it, but again, it's how guys were spaced out. Because of Ashley's injury, he became a guy who didn't get drafted at all. But I think if we had thought about it, if that 14 team stays intact, maybe you're looking at 3 guys going instead of just, I think it ended up being 1 and then Nick going in the second. But
right.
So yeah, does it surprise me? No. But I could see why it would surprise people.
This is important though, I think, for Tommy Lloyd, because again, he restored Arizona basketball obviously as a top 10 program, and you watch how he played. You watch how they play. It was aesthetically pleasing. He's recruiting well. But, a lot of his, I developed a pro, went back to Gonzaga. It's different when you can say now, even though these were Sean Miller players, and we need to be clear about that, it's different when you can say, all right, this past year, we produced 2 first-round picks and an early second-round pick. That's an easier thing, I think, to be able to sell in living rooms. Not that he needed any help, but it's just one more check mark off in a very quick year there for Tommy Lloyd.
No, what I think is the bigger selling point is, the Arizona logo was all over draft coverage. Mm-hmm. Whether it was when guys were picked, or that graphic showing that behind Duke, it was the G League Ignite and Arizona. But even more important, I think, for Tommy Lloyd is he can say, yeah, I helped Ben Mathurin move up 10 spots in the draft.
Right.
But I made Dalen Terry move up 1,000 spots. Dalen Terry was not on a draft board.
Right.
To start the year. Koloko was barely on any draft boards. If anything, it was supposed to be Tabellis and Mathurin, if anybody. Mathurin, of course, was the guy we all thought would go and could go. But the fact that he could say, yeah, and not only did we take Dalen Terry, but we got Dalen Terry drafted because we were able to make him a well-rounded player. It wasn't the fact that he had an explosion of points. No, by playing defense and passing the basketball and rebounding, he got drafted, which is what a lot of coaches sell, but not a lot of coaches are able to properly sell. Ironically enough, the 2 guys who've been able to do that, Lute Olson and Tommy Lloyd. There's a great quote by Hassan Adams that no one heard because I wasn't supposed to hear it, but he says,
"What do you got?
You don't come to Arizona to score 25 points. You come to Arizona to win 25 games and make 25 million.
Right, for sure. And, it plays out like that. I think Lloyd could also sell, too, that he was able to get the most out of these players. Now, look at it. I think you're right. Ben was going to be a first-round pick, I think, either way. But look at Dalen Terry, for example. He was basically, as a freshman, he was kind of resigned to standing in the corner and watching the offense go, whereas Tommy Lloyd comes in and he's saying, let's get up and down. You can have the ball in your hand. You can initiate some offense. And he was also asked about Christian Koloko and what the difference was for him. And he said, and I thought this was very apropos, he said, we love on him. And that to me is a kid that is trying hard, but he needs some positive encouragement at times instead of just the snarls. So he hit the right buttons with all these players there, William.
Yeah, and I don't know if he does because Lute used to coach every kid differently.
Mm-hmm.
For the he was easy on Jason Gardner, which is ironic because Gardner's such a competitor, but he was a jerk. Oh, if Luke could be a jerk,
right?
To Ricky Anderson,
right.
They Salim got yelled at for what Mustafa did wrong, but it worked for most guys. And then when they didn't, they transferred. So I think there's some Lloyd in there. Lloyd, we'll love on Koloko as opposed to be critical. We're gonna have a dog right here coming to say hi.
Hey there.
I'm guessing, he lets Krisa be Krisa. He lets a lot of guys' individuality shine while at the same time fitting him into this system. But it's not a rigid system, which I think is also beneficial to these players. I think that's, if you really want to be critical of Sean Miller, it's the fact that, he tried to fit, square pegs and round holes and fit guys who didn't fit his system into a rigid system. And even when he said he was going to loosen the reins, he really didn't. He really didn't.
Yeah, and that's the key. So now what do you look for next year then? Because right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, you can put in, you're going to have to bet straight up on this one, but Arizona is this slight favorite to win the Pac-12 championship next year. And if you don't want to bet on that, put in $5. You get $100 in free plays if you bet on these UFC 276 fights, 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. What do you think about that, Brad? I'll be honest with you. I was a little surprised. I thought UCLA would be the favorite again, being that Hawkes is back, Tiger Campbell's back. You're bringing in 2 top 15 players. But obviously, Tommy Lloyd has done something that, Vegas looks at it and says that's something to ride with right there.
Yeah, I think, again, you look at it, and to me, it's a broken record. It's Arizona, it's UCLA, and it's probably Oregon.
Right.
Oregon added well. I think USC will be in the conversation, but it's really a top-heavy 4.
Right.
I think Washington will be a little better than they were, but I don't think they can compete, and I don't see anyone else really ready to compete with what they have. So, we all know Vegas wants even money, and maybe that's why you put Arizona a little ahead, and you hope that, some people who are going to, maybe you can bait them into another bet or whatever. But so am I surprised? Yes. Again, am I shocked? No. But yeah, I think off the top of my head, until I can see some of these guys perform in the preseason, my guess would be you'd put Arizona second or third.
Right. All right. Now let's talk a little in-state recruiting here, because I thought it was cool during draft night, and this is the first time it's ever happened. You had 3 native Phoenicians, not prep school kids. I mean, they went to prep schools, but kids that were born and raised in Phoenix, from Ty Washington to Dalen Terry to Jalen Williams. I've been saying it for quite a while now that the Valley is getting a lot better talent right there, and Arizona, it would behoove them to be able to keep it in there. Now they just offered Cody Williams, Jalen Williams' brother, Koa Pete's on there, Dylan Anderson. But this has changed a lot, Brad, from where when you were covering it very closely in the 90s, early 2000s, to where every 3 years there was an RJ or a Bibby or a Bayless. Now there's a guy pretty much every year that's coming out of there. It just depends on if you want to prioritize him or not.
Yeah, and what we have seen is we see this West Coast where these hotbeds pop up every few years. Mm-hmm. And I know for a while you could go and track it to industry coming into town. So what happened? Young families came into town 18 years later, 15. It was the tech boom in the Pacific Northwest. Right. And then you had that run of Washington recruits. You could even go back to when I think Boeing added more jobs there
in Seattle.
Seattle. And then there was the Portland Renaissance for a while. And then Phoenix got real big for a while. Remember, we had that stretch run where Phoenix produced Fry and Bibby and it was even Bayless.
The Fontenot brothers and
even really through Nick and those guys, and then it kind of tailed off a little. And now again you're having another spike, and I'm guessing we're going to see Phoenix have a little run here. Now having the prep schools there helps. Having better basketball schools there help. Frankly, I guess having better athletics in the state of Arizona. The commitment, even the commitments like Hamilton and Chandler have made to football, girl sports, Olympic sports. But, we're going to see that where it will you'll see 2 or 3 year runs, and then it will be Portland next. So it'll be, Vegas had their run with the Zimmerman and Collins and all those guys. So I'm not surprised now. Yeah, that gives Arizona a leg up because Tucson is far enough away that kids can get away, but not so far away that they're away from home. But so many of these guys are used to spending summers away. So I don't think it's as big a deal. Plus, you can watch all the games on the internet and you can FaceTime with mom and dad. But you have to give them a reason. But I think more beneficial is it's so easy to make it unofficial.
Right.
How many times was Dalen Terry down to Tucson?
All the time.
Every other week.
Right.
Anderson's been down 40 times. So it was a huge benefit. And again, it is prioritizing these kids. You've seen the kids Arizona has gotten in, but they missed Williams. They missed who was the kid who went to Marquette a few years ago?
Marcus Howard.
And then what, the Saban kid? Is it Saban?
Saban Lee,
who went to
Vanderbilt. Who's in the NBA now? Yeah.
Yeah, who's in the NBA, and that was I don't know if that was a miss because I don't know if any of us thought he was that good. But, those guys are there, and Arizona has not always gone after them. But if you, again, look at the history of Arizona basketball since about 1988, they have gotten the majority of the kids from Phoenix that they have wanted, or from the state of Arizona that they have wanted. And I think that will continue to be the trend. Obviously, when Carolina and Duke and Kentucky come, that is something you're going to have to compete with. But it's a lot easier to compete with those guys than it is for, say, Arizona football to compete with Texas and Alabama and, Notre Dame for those same types of talent.
What do you think about Cody Williams? Obviously, again, just to reset, Gilbert Perry, Dylan Anderson's teammate, 6'6", top 50 recruit. His brother just went in the first round, just got an Arizona offer. And as we know, Tommy Lloyd is very, very picky about who he offers. What did you think about that?
Again, I haven't seen him in person. I didn't have the benefit of going to the Super 7 or whatever that thing. I think it looked awesome, too.
I got to sit next to Bruce Pascoe the whole time and bother Bruce.
See, what was funny is I've sat by Bruce at a couple of those events, and he bothered me because it was back pre as much where you could watch video on all the guys and things like that. So there's a lot of questions for me, and then I would pick his brain about the current team. So yeah, sitting by Bruce is always a good time. But I like what little I've seen of Cody Williams. I'm at the point now, until he proves me wrong, that I trust the evaluations of this staff. So if they're telling me Cody Williams is worth a scholarship offer, I also think, I do wonder, because I've always, I think we all have thought, well, how would I handle recruiting if I was the coach?
Right.
And yes, not only do you offer the guys who are good enough, but you also have to offer the guys you think you can get.
Right.
So my guess is, maybe Cody Williams is an 8.5 talent wise, but he's a 9.5. We can get the guy, so that balances out to a 9. You know what? I don't know. But my guess is all indications are Arizona's going to be in it to the end with the kid, as long as they want him. So I think that helps. Again, you take a guy who is capable and likes you, then suddenly he's your guy. And if that's the case, again, when you throw him in with those talented guards and with a sophomore Dylan Anderson, he becomes a very intriguing recruit.
And what's fascinating to me about a guy like that always is, first of all, do you check off the boxes on the court? But then it becomes incredibly intriguing for me when, okay, you've also got a brother that's in the NBA. You come from a really good family. So that means that I don't need to necessarily worry about other stuff. However good you're going to be is probably how good you're going to be here, and we've seen this, we saw this a ton towards the end of the Miller era, where you got guys that came in here, but for a variety of reasons, sometimes not the coach's fault, weren't really interested in maximizing their potential. So if you get a kid like that, those are generally guys that you can win with.
with the exception of Andre, guys who have older brothers who played at a high level have tended to be good players and teammates. You look at Gabe York. You look at, that's the obvious one. There's been a few others, and dads as well. Ricky Anderson knew what to expect because his dad played for Lute.
Right.
Luke Walton knew what to expect because not only did his dad, but all his brothers played D1 basketball. And I know I'm forgetting a few other, Nick Johnson came from a
very good basketball program, right?
And even Andre
understood
just wasn't what it took to be a pro. He didn't understand what it meant to be a good teammate, but his brother was a pretty darn good basketball player too on the East Coast. Rondé, I believe his brother also played. All those guys were willing to accept roles that might not have been the most favorable thing. So I think that when you add that to Cody Williams, and again, money shouldn't be an issue because his brother is going to be getting paid. Work ethic shouldn't be an issue because he's seen his brother maximize his talent to go pro. All indications that it's a good family. So I like that fit for Arizona.
Now, what do you, Sean Seeley, a fellow Saguaro great, a grad of, I think, 97, if I'm not mistaken, just asked, what do you expect for Dylan Anderson? We haven't talked about him much. Immediately and then big picture. What do you think there, William?
I'm thinking this year he's the fourth big. Spot minutes, foul trouble guy who comes in. Frankly, I think he could end up being a lot like, who was the guy from Sabino a couple years ago?
Matt Korchek.
Yeah, that kind of role.
Right.
First year, happy to be there.
Right.
But I like his upside. And again, a lot of it's going to be work ethic, ability to put on weight. He already looks like he's put on some muscle. Frankly, again, I'm going to default to what I saw out of guys who made Omar Ballo better and better in front of our eyes, made Christian Koloko better. I think he's going to grow and develop and become is he an NBA guy? I don't know. He seems pretty athletic, but is he a 3-4 year contributor? Absolutely.
Gilbert Perry is fascinating because I can't remember the last time, and maybe honestly, sorry, Sean, 96. I can't remember the last time a public school, and I guess we can count St. Mary's here, where you had the Twins and then you had Fry, but I can't remember a time where you had a school like Gilbert Perry that has Dylan Anderson, Arizona commit. Then you have Cody Williams, a guy with an Arizona offer. Then you've got the grand prize of Amal Koa-Pete from who's going to be a sophomore, who's one of the 5 best players in his class. As far as public schools go, I can't remember that, William.
I mean, the last one I can think of, and I'm sure I'm missing some, was Shadow Mountain in about 95,
right.
where they had Bibby and they had Brian Green. Nick Green, Brian, yeah. And I think they ended up having one other guy who played, lower D1 ball on that team. But you don't see it a lot. And frankly, one of the reasons you don't see it is guys tend to jump.
Right.
You have your Nick Johnson, you decide to go play your final year.
I remember one, Brad. The Deer Valley team. This is back when you were still on the Daily Beat, where you had Lawrence Hill, Joey Shaw, and Christian Polk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because Arizona didn't wind up with any of, nor do they really
nor do they really want him.
They want, Hill was the only guy they looked at, but then I forget who they ended up getting instead of Hill. Because I remember that was right after my website split with another website, and they were all buddies with those guys.
Right.
And I'd get why are we recruiting Hansbrough when we could have Hill? Why are we recruiting Josh McRoberts when we could have Hill?
Right. Well, there you go.
Because they're better.
Because they're better basketball players.
Yeah. But you're right. That school was, those were fun players to watch.
Okay, now let's move over to Arizona football. I'm looking at the schedule here, William. I'm looking at the Pac-12 South. Arizona right now is looked at as having 2.5 wins on the season. I like the over. If I were to go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, I'd like the over on that, but I'd also like to put down $5 if I'm a new customer on these UFC 276 fights. Code word PHNX. But Brad, if you were to hop on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, initially, do you like the over of 2.5 wins next year?
I do. I do. I don't know by much, but I do. Yeah.
Right. And then so I'm looking at the South. Obviously, USC and Utah probably not going to beat them. Especially USC now. You've got a real coach in there for the first time. You've had a huge transfusion of talent, a huge infusion of talent, and so they're probably not going to be able to be topped. But I think ASU is going to suck. Colorado does nothing for me, and UCLA is beatable. So right now, I think Arizona could be mid-level in the Pac-12 South.
I think a lot of it is we just don't know how good UCLA is going to be, and we don't know. I see a lot of people still picking ASU third, and I don't get it.
I don't get it at all either.
I don't see a whole lot of talent there. But to me, it's those other games on the schedule. I mean, I think there's like 5 or 6 toss-up games.
Right.
And Arizona's got to be on the right side of about half. I think at San Diego State, I think North Dakota State, I think at Cal, I think Colorado, Washington. I mean, if you've got a chance to come out pretty strong. And if you can, and it's cliche, but it's absolutely true, you have to learn how to win. Mm-hmm. And last year they just didn't know how to put games away. I mean, how many games were they in? And ironically enough, I think it was only because Cal didn't have enough players who knew how to win left on that roster. But Arizona should have beat Utah. Mm-hmm. Arizona could have beat UCLA had Jordan not gone down, McLeod. They were trading punches with ASU for a while, and then unfortunately you can only go so far with young Mr. Plummer and the rest of that team. But if you can, I think there's a realistic possibility they can go 2-1 in the non-conference. Now they could also go 0-3. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
In which case you're not hitting the over. But San Diego State does not look as good as they were last year. North Dakota State at the end of the day, and I know they're really good, and Arizona lost to NAU last year. One, you're going to have Arizona's attention that week.
Right.
But that's a team, again, as good as they are, when those 1AA teams, and I know the BCS.
I know what you're talking about.
But when they win, they don't win going halfway across the country. Right. South Dakota State goes 4 hours to Kansas
or to Iowa or something.
Northern Iowa goes to Iowa or Iowa State. Jackson State drives down the road to Florida State. These guys are going to come across the country. It's going to be a hot night, conceivably. And then even Mississippi State. Does Mississippi State probably have more talent? Absolutely. But you've got an SEC team coming west. They don't do well. Look at LSU last year. Look at LSU going to ASU a few years ago. And Mike Leach teams can implode from time to time. They can also drop 70 on Arizona. And so, again, I don't count Arizona out in any of those games. I also don't know if they're going to be favorite in any of those games. I think they'll probably be a favorite against North Dakota State, but I think it's going to be a single score.
Doesn't it matter, though? I mean, obviously it does, but doesn't it matter to a great extent, though, that unlike having Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer were both very different quarterbacks. I think Will Plummer was more effective, but neither were good, obviously. But Gunnar Cruz really didn't want to throw the ball. So basically it was a 2-yard pass or it was a 50-yard launch out of bounds, whereas the game always just looked a little too fast for Will Plummer. And Arizona was able to be in a lot of these games. You add the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year in Delora. You've got a guy that can make plays. That, to me, should mean something. And I think if you were to put Delora on the team last year, they'd probably win 3 or 4 games.
Well, just look at the small stretch they had with a healthy Jordan McLeod.
Right.
They gave Oregon fits, and that was with McLeod
throwing 5 picks
in the red zone. 4 of them in the red zone?
Yeah.
And that was still a 1-score game midway through the 4th. You look at the UCLA game where Arizona was in it. I mean, they were I think within a single score when he went down with the injury. And then just look at the continued evolution of Plummer. Plummer, again, could not beat NAU.
Right.
But almost beat Utah.
Right.
I don't think Plummer's a very good quarterback. I didn't think he was a very good quarterback coming out of high school. I didn't get that one. And I don't mean to be mean to Will Plummer, but he does not look like a very good quarterback to me. And he was serviceable by the end of the year on a bad football team. So, yes, if Delora is even the guy he was last year, this is a team that is now capable of winning football games. And again, I don't know if Jedd Fisch can coach or not. I have no idea. I liked what I saw post NAU, basically. I mean, going into Oregon.
They competed.
Yeah, they looked better. They looked more competent. And I know people say, well, what about, again, you can only call the plays that your team can execute. We don't know what was checked down, checked out of. We don't know what's in the playbook that you could not run. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Andy Reid ran good offenses with Alex Smith.
Right.
He's run record-breaking offenses with Patrick.
Well put.
Andy Reid's not a different coach. You can't run a bootleg, throw it sideways pass with Captain Checkdown, Alex Smith. So again, I don't know. Again, Jedd Fisch could be an awful game day coach. We just don't know. But I'm not going to write him off because they were awful against NAU in week 2 of a rebuilding project with Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer.
Okay. Before we sign off here, William, you like the over 2.5, correct?
I do.
Okay. And you would put Arizona, probably without doing a ton of detailed research in basketball, you'd probably put them about third going into next year.
Second or third.
All right, Brad. Now, fill the people in. What are you up to? When's your next podcast for
That's a good question. Kids are home right now, so getting these quiet times, you could probably hear the Taco Bell bag rattling all throughout
There's nothing wrong with that either.
All throughout the podcast, and my daughter was actually very good trying to shush the dogs away from me. But yeah, I'm going to try and get 1 or 2 a week done. Got some things coming up that'll give me a little more time to record moving forward. Yeah, that's good. That's my goal, 2 a week. And then I'd really like to get, once preseason really starts, get to about 3 a week. Do a lot of U of A stuff. I know guys like Sean, like the music talk. There'll be plenty of horrible father talk, as well as spending a lot of time with the kids right now.
Right. All right, everybody. We all appreciate you, obviously. Let's see. John, Sean, Kobe, Daniel Thiel right there. Everybody on there. Brad, you're the best. We'll be back with you next week. Follow Brad on Twitter at WSRBrad. Or you can follow me at Iron Mike Luke, or you can follow both of us at the same time. Brad, you're the best, dude. We'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you later, man.
All right. See you guys later. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.